In 2007, one company sold more mobile phones than any other on Earth, not slightly more. In the last 3 months of that year, it sold about 4 out of every 10 phones on the planet and about half of every smartphone. It had already built a touchscreen phone that browsed the internet 5 years before the iPhone. It had already built a tablet 6 years before the iPad. It had the best hardware, the best factories, the best distribution into the poorest and fastest growing markets on Earth, and a brand so trusted that its cheapest handset, the Nokia 1100, went on to sell about 250 million units and become the best-selling phone ever made. 7 years later, it sold its entire phone business to Microsoft for around $7.2 billion. Microsoft then wrote almost all of that off. That company is Nokia, and this is not the story you have been told. You have been told that Nokia was arrogant, that it missed the iPhone, that it sat still. Nokia did not sit still. Nokia saw it, built it, and had it working in a lab years early. What killed Nokia was something quieter and far more common, and once you can see it, you will find it inside almost every organization you have ever worked for. Explained so simply a 5-year-old could follow along. Start with what Nokia actually was, because the scale of this is hard to picture now. Nokia was founded in 1865 in Finland as a pulp mill. Paper. For its first century, it made paper, then rubber, then boots and tires, and cables and televisions. It only began making mobile phones in earnest in the 1980s, and by 1998, it had passed Motorola to become the biggest phone maker in the world. Then it became something stranger than a company. By the year 2000, Nokia was about 4% of Finland's entire economy, about a fifth of everything the country exported, and roughly 70% of the value of the Helsinki Stock Exchange. One firm, a country of 5 million people, had, in effect, one enormous employer, one tax base, one source of national pride, and it made telephones. And in 2007, at the very top, a small computer company in California announced a phone. Here is the part that ruins the easy story. Nokia already had it. Nokia's own former chief designer has said publicly that by around 2002, Nokia had built a device with a touchscreen that lets you browse the web, look up restaurants, and play games. Nokia had a web tablet finished around 2001 with roughly 1,000 units built and then canceled it. The ideas were not missing. They were made. They were held in Finnish hands and they were put down. So why does a company do that? Here is the 5-year-old version, and it is the whole episode. Imagine you work somewhere and your boss asks you how the project is going. And imagine you already know 2 things. You know the project is behind, and you know that the last person who said a project was behind got shouted at in front of everybody. So you say it is going fine. Not a lie exactly. It will be fine probably if a few things land. You will fix it before anyone notices. Now imagine everybody in the entire building is doing that at once every day for years. Every single person is behaving sensibly for themselves. Nobody is lying, quite. And the information traveling up the building is getting a little bit more optimistic at every floor, so that by the time it reaches the top, the people making the decisions are looking at a company that does not exist. That is what happened at Nokia. And this is not a guess, it was studied. 2 researchers, Timo Vuori and Kwai Hui, interviewed dozens of Nokia people across every level and published the results in Administrative Science Quarterly in 2016. What they found was fear, but 2 completely different kinds of it, sitting on top of each other. The senior leaders were afraid of the outside, of Apple, of Google, of the share price, of what the analysts would say. That fear is normal, and by itself it is even useful. The middle managers were afraid of the inside, of their own bosses, of looking weak next to the manager in the next department. Now watch what those 2 fears do when you put them in the same building. The frightened people at the top pushed hard for results, but did not fully share how bad things were outside, because that would look like panic. The frightened people in the middle heard the pressure and told their bosses what would keep the pressure off. Nobody at the top had an accurate picture. Nobody in the middle felt safe enough to give them one. And the company kept moving confidently in a direction chosen from a map that was wrong. Then there was the technical problem underneath. which the fear made impossible to fix. Nokia's smartphones ran an operating system called Symbian. Symbian was genuinely powerful and had been built up for years, and it was also, by the late 2000s, extremely unpleasant to write software for. Apple and later Google offered developers something that was simply easier. And the thing about phones by then was that the phone was not the product anymore. The apps were the product. The phone was just the place they lived. So Nokia was in a race where the finish line had moved. It was still winning at making telephones magnificently, while the actual competition had quietly become a contest about whether a 19-year-old in a bedroom would rather build for you or for the other guy. That is a race you cannot win with a better camera. And people inside Nokia knew. That is the tragedy of it. Engineers knew Symbian was in trouble. There were people arguing for the alternatives, but telling the truth loudly enough to change the direction of a company that was 4% of your country's economy, when the last person who did that got punished for it, is a career-ending act. And almost nobody does career-ending acts. In 2010, Nokia brought in an outsider to fix it, a Canadian named Stephen Elop, the first non-Finnish chief executive in the company's history, who had come from Microsoft. In February of 2011, he wrote a memo to his own staff, and it leaked within a day. In it, he compared Nokia to a man standing on a burning oil platform in the North Sea, who has to choose between the fire and a jump into freezing water. He wrote that the iPhone had shipped in 2007 and Nokia still had nothing close to it, and that Android had just taken Nokia's lead in smartphone volumes after 2 years of existing. Days later, Nokia announced it was abandoning its own operating systems and putting its future on Microsoft's Windows Phone. Now you can argue about that decision forever, and people do, but look at what it did immediately. Nokia had just told the world that everything it currently sold was dead. Not soon, now. Anyone considering a Nokia phone knew that the software on it had been publicly condemned by the man running the company. Anyone considering writing software for Nokia knew the platform was being switched to one almost nobody used. Sales of the thing that was still paying the bills fell off a cliff, and the replacement was not ready. There is a phrase people who work there still use about that period. They say they poured petrol on their own burning platform. In September of 2013, Microsoft agreed to buy Nokia's phone business for about 5.4 billion euros, roughly $7.2 billion, and the deal closed in April of 2014. Around 32,000 people moved across. 15 months later, in July of 2015, Microsoft wrote off $7.6 billion, which is more than it had paid. The phone business was worth less than nothing. Nokia, the company, did not die. That is the part people forget. It still exists, and it is large. It just does something you cannot hold. It went back to building the equipment that telephone networks are made of, bought Alcatel-Lucent for about 15.6 billion euros in a deal completed in 2016, and today it is one of the biggest telecom infrastructure companies on Earth. The name still appears on phones, but under license to a different company entirely. So what do you actually take from this? First, and this is the one that matters, information does not travel uphill on its own. It has to be dragged, and fear is the thing that stops it. Every organization says it wants bad news early. What determines whether it gets any is not the policy. It is what visibly happened to the last person who delivered some. Second, being right privately is worth nothing. There were people inside Nokia who understood exactly what was coming. Their being right did not save a single job, because correct analysis that never survives the trip to the decision maker is the same as no analysis at all. Third, watch for the race-changing shape. Nokia was not beaten at the thing it was competing at. It was still the best phone manufacturer in the world on the day it lost. Somebody moved the finish line from hardware to software, and Nokia kept sprinting at the old one, faster than anyone, in the wrong direction. Blockbuster could see Netflix. Kodak invented the camera that killed it. Sears built the machine Amazon later ran on, and Nokia had the phone in a lab before Apple shipped one. 4 episodes now, and not one of these companies was blind. Every single one of them could see it. Seeing it was never the hard part. The hard part is a room full of people admitting out loud what they already know. While the old thing is still making money, And the person who says it first is the person who gets blamed. If you want more true stories like this, drawn badly on purpose and explained simply on purpose, subscribe. Next time, the airline that owned the sky. It invented the way you fly, put its name on the most famous building in New York, and was the first thing everyone thought of when they thought of America abroad. Then it sold the building, sold the routes, and vanished.